All right, so would you introduce yourself for the people?
So I'm William Douglas, and I'm running for Justice of the Peace for Rains County.
Excellent. And so the first question I have for everyone is what led to the moment, or what was the moment where you decided this is the path I want to take, no doubt?
So I kind of boiled on that for a long time. What made me, I didn't decide to actually do it until the last minute. I didn't go in and apply until the last day to apply. But what made me do the decision to do that is I saw a lot of room for change. And I noticed that there was only one person that stepped up to that plate, and I strongly believe that there is a lot of change that needs to be done. And I believe that Rains County as a whole needs to have multiple candidates to decide on who's best for making that change.
What do you see as the biggest challenge that you're going to face in this role, and how do you plan to overcome it?
So this role is full of challenges. It is full of lots of challenges. But I love challenges. Challenges are exciting. But as a whole, I would probably say the biggest challenge for this role is the inquest. And that's just as a human being. I think that that's a difficult challenge for anybody. But it's a job that needs to be done, and I'm willing to step up to that plate.
Okay. And so I know that I've seen online a lot of people thrown out there that you don't have the law enforcement experience. You don't have this, you don't have this. So obviously there are some areas where maybe you don't have that experience yet. So what is your plan on how to approach those situations where you don't have as much experience, so that way you can still move it forward?
So with the whole thing of everybody saying that I don't have law enforcement background and stuff, it's all the voters need to take the time to actually do the research on each position. Rains County's only had one JP with law enforcement background in the past 30 years. I can list 4 JPs that were some of the best JPs we had that did not have law enforcement background. Our current judge doesn't even have law enforcement background, so it's hard for me to wrap my mind.
Sorry, county judge or JP?
County judge.
Okay.
County judge.
Okay.
Our current JP does have law enforcement background, and he's the only one within 30 years that has had law enforcement background. So, but the one thing is all elected JPs, no matter their experience, go through proper training to ensure that they're trained for that position. And no matter your experience, there's not one candidate that has experience of a JP's office unless they've been in that office.
So how do you plan to, other than the initial training that you mentioned, there's going to be situations that come up that
So if I ever come into, so during that training process, it's not a one-on-one training. It's a training where all the elected JPs get together with current JPs, and they're the ones that train you. So during that time, you become fellow partners with other elected JPs and current JPs. So if there's ever a situation that I'm in a predicament where I don't know where to rule, I can contact other fellow JPs or current JPs that trained us to kind of get that insight on what I should do.
So there are limits to this position's authority. How do you plan to work within those limits to still create positive outcomes for the county?
So all elected offices have statutes that they have to follow by. I will most definitely follow the law 100%. And those statutes are pretty precise on what you can do. And so that's really kind of basic.
So you said, you'd have the JPs that you can rely on. Is there anything else that you can think of that you could rely on for input when making these difficult decisions that you're going to be faced with? And how to weigh that advice. So, you have the JPs, that's a pretty heavy source, right? Are there any other sources that you plan to utilize?
So it's basically just the statutes, which tell us what we can and cannot do. And like I said, they are very precise on determining on what you can actually do. And communicating back and forth with other JPs and just making sure I'm following the law correctly.
How do you balance listening to constituents with making tough decisions that may not be popular?
So I'm always dealing with things that may not be popular as a business owner. But, that's just really one of those. Let me think. How would be the best way to answer this?
A different phrasing would be when a decision you're involved in draws public criticism, how are you going to handle that personally and professionally?
So, as a justice of the peace, their main job is to always remain neutral. So, my personal opinion doesn't really matter in those situations. It's strictly what's the law and the facts brought to the table, and not really my personal opinion. I can't put my personal opinion in it.
Okay. So tell us about a project or a situation that didn't go as planned for you. What did you learn from it, and how did you recover from it?
Me opening the pet store here in Emory. So despite everybody telling me not to do it because it is such a small county, I went ahead and did it anyways because I love the county. And that's the only way that we'll ever get things done is if we bring more businesses into Rains County. But whenever I opened the pet store, I also opened it where I had an auction on Fridays. And whenever I did come into realization that the pet store was not going to work because the county's not big enough yet, the auction is kind of what kept me afloat, and over time became very successful. And so what I learned from that is if there's a will, there's a way.
So I've seen posts, and this is kind of a little off, so you don't have to answer it, but I have seen posts where you've created events for people in the community that may or may not be connected with you personally. What drives you to do that?
See room for change. I mean, honestly, when people need help, you've got to pull together as a community to make a change. And so there has been multiple instances where either someone's lost their house or someone passed away, or just like here recently, the 3 kids that tragically lost their lives. We're going to be having an auction this Friday to help donate money towards that thing. So we're always about trying to help, and that's really another reason why I decided to even run for Justice of the Peace, because I see room for that change, and there needs to be change.
So, and this is another question that is off of these, but it's related to what we're talking about. And again, you can choose to not answer it. But it seems as though you have a humanitarian heart. How do you feel that will play into the role of being a JP, where it's a lot more black and white, letter of the law?
So it is black and white, but it's also one of those positions where you have to have a heart, because you have to understand the whole. You can't just understand one side of the stick. You have to understand the other side of the stick. And so I bring kind of not just because I don't have law enforcement experience doesn't mean I have a idea of the law. I do very well have the idea of the law. But I also have the idea, and through personal experience and personal life, of what some of these people are going through personally. And it's not always about, okay, I'm going to write you a ticket for this. It's how can I direct that person down the correct path? And here in Rains County, it's a big issue, especially, our 2 biggest things here in Rains County is drugs and family violence. And what are those for? Juveniles. And the juveniles are our future, and we've got to find a way to not keep going in this circle, to redirect them down another path. It's not just about getting them in trouble. It's about, you got to do what the law is, but you got to also redirect them down the right path.
So in our community, it's country, county, right? It's the smaller communities, and there's a lot of people that don't have as loud of voices as others. So how do you plan to make sure those not so loud voices are still heard?
So if anybody knows me knows I don't have a loud voice. I've had to get a loud voice during this, but one thing that I've been telling everybody, and I strongly am seriously going to do it, if I do get elected, my doors will always be open. And like these meet and greets and stuff that are going on right now, I will not just be doing that during this election time. I'll have certain days where I'll say, hey guys, I'll be up at y'all come back cafe eating breakfast. If you have any concerns or anything what's going on in the county, come up here and talk to me. And that way it's not just a public thing, it's where people that don't have the loud voice or don't want to get up in public can come talk to me face to face directly and let me know what their concerns and stuff are.
So how would you handle a situation where a decision you make could benefit someone you know personally, politically, or financially?
So one thing to understand is whenever it comes to like family, for instance, I legally cannot make any decisions involving family. I will take myself out of those situations, and you have to bring in someone else that's not in relations to those people. But another thing that I stand behind strongly, and I've always said this even before I decided to run, I could care less about somebody's bank account, and I could care less about the name that's attached to that individual. And so it's really just about what's legal, what's the law, and not that individual.
Okay. And so at the end of your term, William, how should residents measure whether you were successful in this role?
So during this whole time, I've been very pushing that I'm not going to get up and tell you promises that I can't keep. And so, but the one promise I have always told everybody is that I will be fair and just. And so I should be judged whenever my term is up if I was able to keep that promise on whether or not I was fair and just to every individual.
And if you could realistically accomplish one meaningful thing, like this would be speaking to more the humanitarian side,
Yeah.
right? If you could accomplish one meaningful improvement during your term, what would it be and why?
The biggest thing that I want to put an impact on everybody in Rains County is the juveniles. And that's just because of that, like I said, the two main things we have right now is drugs and family violence. And I would personally really like to see like a program set in place or something here in Rains County that gets these kids out and stuff and changes their path. It's not always about, just pushing them into a pen and doing it like that. We got to redirect them. The kids are our future, and that's just plain and simple. Whether people like it or not, they are our future.
And so right now, so that's all the standard questions that I have. There's community questions, but it's about lithium mining things that don't really relate to the JP role. Let me just double check that, make sure I'm right. Yeah, it's like 19 and 16. So at this point, is there anything that has been asked online that you haven't? I've seen that you pretty much respond to everybody, and I love that. Just so you know, I love that. But is there anything else, any other questions that have been asked of you that you don't feel you've been able to answer to that you would like to speak to now and share with everybody?
Not really necessarily. The main questions I get is, how do you think you're fit for it without having law enforcement background? And I strongly believe I'm only getting that question asked because my opponent does have the law enforcement background. But it's just to understand everybody needs to do the research on that position and know that nobody has experience in this position unless they've been in that seat directly. And neither of us have been in that seat directly. But other than that, I would say the other biggest asked question is just my age. And it can go vice versa, but you can be an 80-year-old and sat in the house and done nothing, or you can be a 25-year-old and accomplished a lot and been around the world and seen a lot of things and been through hell and back, literally. And so it can be vice versa, but in my case, I stand behind that pretty strongly.
Okay, excellent. Now, is there anything else that you want to share with the people out there to say, hey, this is me, or just anything else that you want to add to wrap it up?
I would love to have y'all's vote. Change needs to be done, and with change takes time. And I do not have kids. I'm a single person. I have plenty of time. I have all the time in the world to dedicate it for that change.